So when I was a junior in college, I know I shared this. I spent the year in England. I was studying English, as one of my British friends said sarcastically, as a second language. And specifically, I was in Cambridge, which is a beautiful town northeast of London. So I tried to explain to Deanna what it was like, and eventually we were able to visit decades after I was there. Interestingly, there is not one but two shows on PBS that deal with murder mysteries that take place in Cambridge, England. The first is called Grantchester. I've mentioned it before. It's about priests that help the local policemen solve murder mysteries. Great series. And the second, more recent, is called Professor T. It's about a genius neuroatypical criminologist who teaches at Cambridge and who helps solve murder mysteries. And so Deanna wondered, after watching these shows, were there bodies just turning up everywhere in Cambridge, England, on a weekly basis? And I said to her, not that I was aware of. It seemed like a very peaceful place to me. But when a society has to confront violence, it raises all kinds of questions. Questions about accountability, questions about prevention. Are we responsible? Can we have acted differently? So I want to share with you a portion of the final piece of our Torah reading this morning, which deals with what happened when our ancestors would come across a body, somebody who was slain, lying in the field. And what happened was that the elders from the two nearest towns would measure and see which town was the individual closest to. And the people from the town that the individual was closest to, they were the ones that had to undergo a ceremony. And they took a heifer, they took a calf, and they sacrificed it. And they said, Yadenu lo shafchu et hadam hazeh ve'einenu lo ra'u. Our hands did not shed this blood, and our eyes did not see this take place. And then they would wash their hands. So you could look at this and say, metaphorically, that they were washing their hands of the whole thing. That they were basically saying, we have nothing to do with this whatsoever. Well, the rabbis centuries later looked at this and they asked a very simple question. Did the esteemed elders of the nearest town really need to say that they didn't murder the person? Did we really suspect that the elders themselves were the murderer? Rather, what they were saying was, never did we see this person needing food and fail to give the person food. Never did we see this person needing lodging and fail to give them a place to stay. In other words, the rabbis understood that what the elders were doing was saying that their responsibility started long before the tragedy took place. Their responsibility lies in making sure that people's needs are taken care of. And interestingly, there are two interpretations. One that says that they needed to be carefully looking at the person who one day might be vulnerable enough to be murdered, but they also needed to be looking at the person who might be vulnerable enough, troubled enough to do the actual murder. Their responsibility didn't start that day. Their responsibility, and I would say by extension, the responsibility of the entire society, started a long, long time before the tragic event took place. So, of course, we woke up a few days ago and discovered that there was another shooting at another school. This one took place at a Catholic school in Minneapolis. And sometimes I think that people's reactions form a kind of ideological Rorschach. In other words, whatever your feelings are about society and about the way things should be, that will affect the interpretation that you bring. I think it is important for us to understand that there are multiple factors that are involved. It is worth noting that absolutely and proportionately, the vast, vast majority of violent crimes are perpetuated by men. That is just a fact. People who remain men, people who are born men, the vast majority of violent crimes are perpetuated by men. I would also ask us to take a step back, to think about school security for sure, to also be mindful of the hatefulness that people have. If somebody is looking to purchase a weapon, it didn't take long for the police to discover what this person was posting. Might it not be a good idea to take a look before you sell somebody a weapon? Get a sense of that person's online presence, of that person's underlying vulnerabilities and perhaps pathologies. So in the spirit of our ancestors saying our responsibility begins long before the tragedy occurs, let's look at everything. Let's look at how people are socialized. Let's look at how people are marginalized. Let's look at how hate is planted and festers. Let's not shy away from anything that can help, God willing, to avoid these tragic events. I look to our Catholic brothers and sisters who share humanity with us, parents who are burying children, and I say, we are one family. We reach out with a sense of anger and a deep sense of sadness and a spirit of love and support. And I urge us, when it comes to any issue, not just to look at the final event, not just to look at the tragic manifestation, but to try to understand the etiology, what's behind it, the way that our ancestors said. We are responsible for people who come within our midst to try to understand, to try to prevent if necessary, to try to support when necessary. And through our efforts, as we realize that we are arevim zeh bazeh, that we are connected to each other, I pray that we will hasten the time when, as the Torah says, lo yishama od chamas ba'artzenu, when violence will no longer be heard in our land or in any land. Amen.